anything about him.
You don't know anything about
I have
him?
no information on
Elon, what do you think about Elon Musk? And what role is he, like a Nikola Tesla? Is he a good guy in your eyes? Is he somebody that, you know, the establishment can't stand? Is he someone they can't control?
Well, I think that certainly if he was inclined to research this end of it, he wouldn't be making I call it a fake Tesla. I mean, a real Tesla car wouldn't have to be plugged in. It most certainly wouldn't have 900 and some pounds of lithium-ion batteries. It would be an electromagnetic generator. You know, if you look at this archive, we have this whole account of this inventor named Floyd Sweet. He had something the size a little bit bigger than a cigarette pack. And then this was back in the 80s. And we have all the documentation on this. Huge files on it. And it was running a 300 horsepower motor that could run your car. And it never had to be plugged in. I think the battery started up with some very tiny battery, you know. And once that circuit started, it was pulling energy.
So what do you guys think about that? So he's saying, hey, what Elon Musk doing? Hey, that's cool, but he got this heavy battery, and look, as a patent attorney and worked a lot with the electric vehicles, that the weight of the battery is kind of a big maybe issue that they have to kind of design around as it relates to the electric vehicle. He's saying, hey, this guy Floyd Sweet, which we'll take a look at some of his documents here, where this gentleman Floyd Sweet, he has this thing that was, hey, just bigger than a cigarette box, produced 300 horsepower, same as 300 horsepower from a gas engine, that much power, which is crazy, never had to be plugged up, renewable energy or clean energy. This stuff was, that's pretty impressive to say the least. So I do want to kind of at least share my screen really quickly and talk about the Inventions Act. This is the Invention Secrecy Act here, as I'm kind of pulling it up here. And just to kind of give you guys a background of where we're going, this is a body of law in the U.S. federal law designed to prevent the disclosure, hopefully you guys can see my screen, of new inventions and technologies that, in the opinion of selected federal agencies, and again, a big word here is opinion. Again, my opinion can be different from his opinion. That can be different from your opinion. So this whole subjective, okay, whose opinion matters, present an alleged threat to economic stability or national security of the U.S. So based on somebody's opinion, if this a technology or invention presents an alleged threat to economic stability or national security of the U.S., hey, it falls within the Invention Secrecy Act, and therefore the government can kind of more or less control the disclosure, the production, the dissemination of that actual technology. And again, what is economic stability? I know PBD was talking about it a little bit on his show of, okay, you have an oil company, you have an oil industry, hey, having this kind of battery that runs on pretty much nothing, or whether it's a water, an engine that runs on water, which essentially means that it's running free, that can disrupt the oil industry. If you have this battery that is small and it gives you a ton of miles, then that can disrupt, again, the gas industry, the car industry. So as the U.S. government, we're going to withhold the dissemination, the distribution, the disclosure of those technology. What about national security? And obviously the national security, I see a lot more as far as the patent industry goes. And again, if you have a bomb or some kind of military defense technology that you're working on, yeah, they're going to kind of prevent you from being able to disclose that, at least to certain countries. So we're going to take a look at that here really quickly. But again, one of the things, we're going to look at the NPEP. Now, again, the NPEP, for all my Christians, all my religious folks, is like the Bible for patent attorneys, similar to the Holy Bible is to Christians, and the Quran is to, I forget what group uses the Quran. But again, this NPEP is the Bible for patent attorneys. So we're going to see what the NPEP says about these secret orders, this Invention Secrecy Act. And again, I want you guys to kind of let me know if you guys agree with this or not. Do you think it, this makes sense and it's kind of to save the greater good, or maybe no? So let's take a look at this really quickly. Hopefully you guys can see this. I'm gonna try to blow my screen up here bigger so that you guys can see this stuff. But we're going to start with the secrecy order. So again, this secrecy order is similar to what we were talking about with this Invention Secrecy Act, or in other words, stems from the Invention Secrecy Act. So let's go to 37 CFR 5.2, the secrecy order here. Paragraph 8, when notified by the chief officer of a defense agency that publication or disclosure of the invention by the granting of a patent would be detrimental to the national security in order that the invention be kept secret will be issued. So what does this mean? This means that you can file for a patent application and the USPTO is in works with the federal government, the defense, the DOD, the FBI, these different branches of the federal government, where if somebody at the USPTO picks up this thing, the application, and says, okay, I think this deals with national security or some other thing where we need to have another 3-letter department review it and see whether or not it should be kept secret. Again, to the extent that it is deemed to be kept secret, somebody from those defense agencies, this is what it says, somebody, a chief officer of that defense agency, essentially will contact the patent owner or the patent application owner and say, hey, we got to keep this thing secret. Let's go to part B here, or paragraph B. Any requests for compensation that's provided in 35 USC 183. So it seems like it may be an unjust, a taking, eminent domain, that type of a thing. And therefore you may be able to get money from it. But again, part B talks about that says any request for compensation. So if you say, hey man, y'all can't just take my stuff like that, I want some money. They're saying that it must not be made to the patent office, but directly to the department or agency. So in other words, the patent office is not going to give you any money for somebody trying to the government taking your invention or your technology. You have to go to the actual agency who said that they're going to keep it secret, and because it kind of falls under that secrecy order, to try to get any money that you may be deemed eligible for. But the U.S. Patent Office, don't call the USPTO talking about y'all kept my invention secret, I need some money. Because what this paragraph is saying is they're not the department to kind of care for that. So let's scroll down a little bit more. Again, this talks about, hey, you can actually try to petition for rescission of the secrecy order. I can tell you maybe that's not going to work as well as you think, but I guess you can try. It doesn't hurt to try. Here we go here. The secrecy order type. So everybody thinks that everything is kind of every invention, every technology that is being held secret is being held secret under the same thing. And it's actually 3 types of secrecy orders, each of a different scope, as it said here. So we have the part A here is the secrecy order. This is the type 1 secrecy order. And this is the secrecy order and permit for foreign filing in certain countries. So this is saying, hey, the U.S. government is saying, hey, this is secret information. However, we're still going to permit you to file it abroad. In certain countries, though, we're not going to let you file it abroad everywhere, but we are going to let you file it abroad in certain countries. So let's go back to it. Let's see what type of technology or invention will fall under the type 1 secrecy order. It's essentially to be used for those patent applications that disclose critical technology with military or space application in accordance with the DoD directive. So again, if you have a technology that's dealing with military or space applications, shout out to Elon Musk, and you're trying to disclose this thing in a patent application, they may allow you to file in certain countries, but again, that type of invention is going to fall under what we call a type 1 secrecy order. Let's go back to it. We have type 2 secrecy order. And again, secrecy order and permit for disclosing classified information. So this seems like it's dealing with classified information. And again, this says to be used for those patent applications which contain data that is properly classified or classifiable under a security guideline where the patent application owner has current DoD, Department of Defense security agreement, has a current DoD security agreement. So in other words, if you're trying to include classified information in your patent application, and you just so happen to be a patent owner who has a current DoD, Department of Defense security agreement, this is going to be considered type 2 secrecy order. Now, you still may be able to disclose the contents, but it's going to fall in the type 2 secrecy order. And then later on, which we'll read, it talks about you will have to have on that actual patent application, this is classified information. So let's go to the third and most important type of secrecy order, the general secrecy order. And this is actually the catch-all. Everything that Dr. Steve Gritt talked about on the PBD podcast, I would imagine that this is going to fall under type 3 secrecy order, the general secrecy order, to be used for those patent applications that contain data deemed detrimental to national security if published or disclosed, including that data properly classifiable under a security guideline where the patent application owner does not have a DoD security agreement. So you don't have a Department of Defense agreement or a security agreement with the Department of Defense. It may be classifiable, maybe classified information, but it contains data that's detrimental to the national security if it's published. The order prevents disclosure of the subject matter to anyone without an express written consent from the Commissioner of Patents. Which again, we talked about how type 1 military space applications, you can file those in in certain countries. Type 2 is classified information, but you still maybe can file those, or you have to have that kind of confidential stamp kind of marked on it, so everybody who's reviewing that material knows that it's confidential information or classified information. Then you have this type 3 secrecy order, which they're saying, hey, the order prevents the disclosure of the subject matter. So, hey, unless you have an express written consent from the Commissioner of the Patents, you cannot disclose this information. So this is the most strict secrecy order type is a type 3 secrecy order. So let's kind of go through here. Type 1 secrecy order. Let me kind of share my screen again. So this type 1 secrecy order, it kind of summarizes things. Type 1 secrecy order, looking at this paragraph here, is intended to permit the widest utilization of the technical data in the patent application while still controlling any publication or disclosure which would result in unlawful exportation. This type of secrecy order, again, identifies the countries where corresponding patent applications may be filed. So they talked about, hey, you can file these things foreignly, but you have to file them in certain countries. And essentially the countries with which the U.S. has reciprocal security agreements, and they list the countries right here. Let's go to type 2. The intent of type 2 secrecy order is to treat classified and classifiable technical data presented as a patent application in the same manner as other classified materials. So typically, if you have classified material, you have that notification on that classified material saying that this is classified information. You have to include that same kind of stamp, if you will, on the patent application to the extent that you're trying to file an application that has under this type 2 secrecy order. And then going here, the last one, type 3 secrecy order is issued where the other types of orders do not apply. This is essentially a catch-all. So that's pretty much it. Then this last paragraph here talks about a secrecy order should not be construed in any way to mean that the government has adopted or contemplates adoption of the alleged invention disclosed in any application, nor is it any indication of the value of such invention. So pretty much they're saying, hey, just because we took your stuff, that doesn't mean that we're going to give you money for it or kind of saying anything about the value of your of that patent application, of that invention, of that technology, or that doesn't mean that we, the federal government, the U.S. government, is actually going to use or apply your invention. We just pretty much essentially taking your stuff. You cannot use it. So hopefully you guys got something out of that. I did want to, and this is actually pretty interesting. I think this is really interesting. Going to the archives that Dr. Steve Greer talked about, we're going to take a look at one account of some gentlemen who saw Floyd Sweet guy that Dr. Steve Greer talked about and his invention on his device that allows you to essentially hook up this device to an automobile, for example, and have electrical energy, the equivalent of 300 horsepower, and essentially do that with a very small device and being able to do that with clean energy. So I'm going to kind of read the important parts of this thing, but hopefully you guys can see it. Let me blow it up a little bit more. Hopefully you guys can see it. That's too big. I can't even see it. This is observation of so this gentleman, Maurice Campbell, which you see here, he's talking about observation of Floyd Sweet device by Maurice Campbell. They redacted some of the names. So obviously it seems like some of the names is going to be Floyd Sweet. But again, this is observation of Maurice Campbell and his two brothers based on the time spent with, I'm assuming that redacted name is Floyd Sweet regarding his free energy device, given a title here. So in about 1988, this is Maurice Campbell talking about it. And I'm not going to read through all the document. I'm going to kind of skip to the important parts here. In about 1988, a gentleman who my brothers and I were involved with in the high-tech field realized that my brother, who was a doctor, was interested in a negative energy device for the treatment of physical body. His name was John. And again, goes back to the gentleman that not Floyd Sweet, but Dr. Steve Greer talked about in that opening paragraph where he was like, hey, this gentleman, John, who was a genius on electromagnetic energy and things like that. It seems like that, again, that name John is coming up again, or that same individual, John, is coming up again based on Maurice Campbell accounts of the events. So it says here, was interested in negative energy. His brother essentially was interested in negative energy. His name was John, and he had formerly been employed by NASA and kind of lived in California close to Sparky. And that is where my story begins. So let's kind of skip the page here because the rest of that stuff is not necessarily that important, at least for my purpose. Yeah, so here we go. So the energy device was mainly three things. It was a healing device. We're not going to get off into that. Seems like that maybe why his brother wanted to use it. It was an energy device that Maurice is saying is probably the world's worst weapon. I'm assuming that this redacted name is Floyd here. He's talking about Floyd claimed that, like Nikola Tesla, it's crazy that Nikola Tesla name is coming up here, you could cause artificial earthquakes, which is crazy, besides destroying buildings. As I understand from people in the intelligence world, this is Maurice Campbell talking again, which we debriefed after we saw the device operate. 3 countries have what is called the Tesla cannon. Russia, America, and he said he's talking about he never found out who was that third country. As mentioned earlier, this energy source is what disabled Floyd's sweet BTA equipment over the many months until he got a buffer built into his device. So it seems like maybe America was using this energy choice to continue to disable Floyd's sweet BTA device over the months that they were dealing with it. Further, this is why the federal government has such interest in what we were doing with Sparky. I'm assuming Sparky is Floyd's suite, but I'm not sure, over the time period we spent with him. This device, and then so that's the second part. The VTA device was, I guess, the world's worst weapon. But then part 3, the device was an energy source for the home, the car, and many other purposes. This cost to build one energy device was about $200, which was incredible, he's saying. And I would say if you're building a battery, even back in the 1980s for $200, that's some pretty legit stuff. So let's skip here. On that blessed day, Maurice Campbell was talking about, when we arrived, him and his brothers, and witnessed this VTA device in operation, he's saying it is a day that he should never forget. To actually see a device that only would cost approximately $200 and create all the clean energy you would ever need was awesome. I know I have been altered ever since knowing that such a device existed. Now for a brief description of the device, which is crazy. He's talking about like he just met I'm not going to get off into that, but let's move along here. We're going to get off into some important parts of it. So here we go. He's talking about the rest of the story. You are probably wondering what the article, so I guess it seems like he's attaching to whoever he's sending this, writing this document to. He's attaching his magnet motor article on Brenton is about. I have allowed his full name because he is already out in the public domain in the Tesla magazine. Again, Tesla had his own magazine. This is crazy. So I thought, what the heck? It's a long story, but after I move in his laboratory all the way from the mouth of Zion's National Park to someplace, Oregon, to hide him out, I'm assuming he's talking about Floyd's suite, he was using the tacky on beams with his medical equipment, and after only a couple of minutes, the black helicopters would show up. So this DBR, I'm assuming at his brother's request, I moved Ron to Oregon. At the time, I thought Blank was a real flake because when I helped him forward his mail from a small town in Utah, he asked me how to spell the word electric so he could put it in a full address, Brenton Electric. So it seems like this Ron guy didn't have a clue how to spell electric, and maybe was at least not the brightest guy. Further said he was only here on Earth. So I guess this guy, Ron, is talking to him, which is kind of crazy. He's talking about he's on Earth only until 2012, and it was 87 or 88 at the time. Then he had to leave to go to another planet. I now wanted to shoot my brother who got me into this whole move thing. My brother told me that he had to, Blank had to move fast because Blank had told him that an earthquake was coming in the next few days. Right. Well, guess what happened a few days later? Maurice Campbell says that the largest earthquake in many years in that particular location took place, and it even wiped out the hot springs at the resort along the Virgin River that runs through Zion's National Park and through the small town of Virgin where Ron lived. I since found out that Ron had invented the earthquake equipment along with this other guy, Blank, grandson, and they had actually predicted the last great earthquake in California, and we're only about 6 minutes. We're only off about 6 minutes. The government is insisted that they want the equipment, so that one of the reasons for, I guess essentially they're trying to hide out this gentleman Ron from the government, it seems like. So now Maurice is talking about, now, why am I giving you all this preliminary information regarding blank? Well, it seems that blank has the magnetic motor. Again, this is the magnetic motor device that Dr. Steve Greer is talking about, that is just bigger than a cigarette pack, and you can be hooked up to your car and essentially provide 300 horsepower of energy to your car, which is crazy. It only weighs 75 pounds, that Maurice Campbell was saying, based on him actually seeing it. And again, he's talking about, what Dr. Steve Greer is talking about, is an authenticated document where Maurice Campbell seen a device that was essentially created by Floyd Sweet. And again, Maurice Campbell was talking about it, 75 pounds, and can generate the equivalent power of 300 horsepower gas engine, which is crazy. Also, the motor can be a retrofit in all cars without designing a whole new car, which is pretty helpful, I would say. This is the connection I will explain later regarding Ron, who can even spell electric. So it seemed like maybe it was some kind of disagreement between Ron and maybe Maurice Campbell and not Maurice Campbell, but Ron and Floyd Sweet. And Maurice Campbell is saying, hey, Ron couldn't even spell electric. Meanwhile, according to his dean, who of the school, placed third of his class at MIT, Floyd Sweet, all I can say is wow. So it seems like Floyd Sweet placed third in his class at MIT. Meanwhile, Ron can even spell electric. So this, I guess, the events surrounding the death, which I'm not going to get off into that. But again, kudos to Steve Greer, man. It seems like he got some heavy stuff in